Morning all. Welcome to Common Good Podcast. Often Dan, I have to look at the calendar on my computer to know what day it is, but not today. But I know it's February.
Yep. An important day for some and a capitalistic money grab for others.
Yeah. No, I usually look up and have to remind myself who was St. Valentine and what did he have to do with anything? Forgot. And every year I forget about who Valentine is, St. Valentine's. But if that's meaningful to you, I put on a red shirt today that says love on it. You know,
Is that red? It looks a little orange to my eyes, but maybe that's just or is it a faded red?
It is hardcore red. It is so red.
Wow.
You might have said a deep pink. It's real.
Maybe I've been colorblind my whole life, and that's the problem.
That's it. Yeah, that starts answering a lot of questions.
It does.
You know what else? A lot of questions is a board game about Jainism, and if you've ever thought, boy, how could I learn about Jainism?
Well, have we got a board game for you?
We really did. Dan and I went off to something called the Parliament of the World's Religions, which was hosted in Chicago this last summer. And we were there doing a whole number of things, talking about whistleblowers, how important whistleblowers are for the safety of our country, government whistleblowers, religious whistleblowers, people at festivals blowing whistles. It's always a fun thing. Street police, they're traffic cops. They need to blow whistles. No, we really did go with a part of a booth that frequent listener and super booster of O Common Good, Joe Carson, helped us find our way to, where we supported the whistleblower effort. And then we had a chance to talk with people who joined from around the world and around the country, of course, the United States of America, but around the world, the Parliament of the World's Religions gathering. And it was in a giant conference center in Chicago, the McCormick Center. And we were in a booth area where you set up a booth along with other people setting up their booths. And people would come by and we would chat with them about our stuff and what we do at Vote Common Good. And then we would recruit other people to come into our booth and do interviews with us. We're just now getting these out to the rest of the world. So our first one here is super interesting. So that's what we're talking about. So if you saw the title of this and you thought Jainism in a board game, all right, we'll talk about that. So over the next couple of months, you will see a number of interviews of the greatest cast of characters. I mean, the people we met were just so fascinating. I'll tell you, you get the world's religions leaders together, and people that would come to something like this were more like us. Dan, right. I don't know if you remember how frequent it was. Talk to Hindus, Jainists, Buddhists, the people that are into like earth stuff. Who's the guy with the big beard? What's that?
Oh, we had pagans and heathens.
Yeah, pagans and heathens.
Like self-declared heathens, not like that's a bad word I'm calling someone. Like they were of the heathen and pagan church.
And we would sit with them and say, so how did you get into this? And it turns out that their relationship with heathenism or paganism or Jainism or Buddhism or Hinduism was very similar to our relationship with Christianity. Like, hey, we think we're a little offbeat. We think we're doing something a little different. We know a lot of people in our world hear this story, but we think it's important that they engage like this. It was fascinating. We were so many of us part of the same way of viewing the world in relationship to our religion. It was just such a treat.
The type of religious person that's willing to go and mingle and converse with other religious people from different traditions is a particular type. It tends to be a little more progressive. Like there weren't a lot of fundamentalist Baptists at the Parliament of the World's Religions because they just don't play nice with other religions. And it was really beautiful and interesting, and we got to meet a lot of fascinating people and hear their stories. And it was Pretty
And
good stuff.
we're gonna bring a bunch of those to you, because not only do they, you're right, Dan, were they like more engaged than a lot of other people in religion, these folks, but they were all creative in some kind of way. Like, they were coming up with ways to be active in the world in their religion in a way that was good for everyone whenever possible, and trying to be more creative than just your typical person. So this first interview that we're going to show you today, 30 minutes, with someone named Surbhi Pandya. Her booth was right across from ours, and her daughters were there, or maybe her daughter and son.
Daughter and son, yeah.
And they had a board game sitting out, and over the couple of days we were watching them sort of move about. And then when Surbhi came, went over and said, "Hey, could we interview you?" And she turns out to be all kinds of fascinating, brilliant. And she's a mom living in the suburbs somewhere. I have forgotten now, maybe Ohio or someplace.
I forget as well.
Yeah. And she's like, well, as a Jainist, I realized it's hard for me to help my kids understand the precepts and teaching of Jainism. So I created a board game for them. I'm like, okay, first of all, you're so interesting. She's like a scientist and an artist.
Yeah, and an artist. Because I looked up her website, to get the links for the show notes, which you all can check out later. And I had forgotten that she is also a painter. She's got these amazing paintings on her website. And this one is themed. If you're just listening, you'll have to go over to the website and check it out. But this painting is a faith and science theme. And it's sort of an abstract image, but you can see like this DNA double helix weaving through this image, and it's just fascinating. Like, again, this is someone that leans more progressive within her Jainist faith, and she even talks about that in the interview, how she doesn't quite fit in with the more traditional Jainists because of this.
Yeah, and that is the theme that will come up over and over, is the creativity and the spontaneity and the let's solve the problem that our religious traditions contribute to kind of tone and attitude. It was just really, really wonderful. And so Surbhi Pandya just turns out to be a real treat. So we're going to get into all of that, and her talking about just the normal things of being a mom with kids and trying to say, like, I want to pass something on that is meaningful to me, to my children. And the way we do it in our Jainist community doesn't work for them. So I created a board game. Like, okay, I've never met anyone who created a board game. I didn't know that just regular old people sat down and just made up a board game, and then had to make up a board game that made sense of a religion. And
Right.
had to make sense of religion, which is Jainism, which is also derivative of other kinds of Hindu and Buddhist things. So the complexity to all of this was just really fantastic. So
Yeah.
So you're going to see this. You're going to see this interview. Dan and I will be on here live with you. So if you're making comments in, we can interact with you in the comments, and then at the end we'll make have a few reflections, because I haven't watched this yet, Dan. I guess you watched it, to prep the video, but I don't remember all the details, so I feel like I'm watching it afresh as well, and can't wait for this for this to happen. So my super crush is on a Jainist board game scientist mom, board game maker scientist mom named Surbhi Pandya. She is she's the Jainist to beat all Jainists in my book. And all right. So do we have to say anything? Oh, we should tell people, if you're waiting for the Sarah McCammon interview about her book, The Evangelicals, we're going to hold off on that until the book comes out. So interview complete, and we will share it with you after March 19th when the book comes out. So stay tuned for that. I know we alluded to that yesterday, and some of you mark your calendars by the Common Good podcast. Just correct it. All right. So Surbhi Pandya, Pandya, if you're going to look her up, Surbhi Pandya. think I've got that spelling right. All right. So just tremendous. So here it is, our conversation with Surbhi.
Surbhi, thank you for being with us and
Thank
talking with us.
you.
We're at the Parliament of the World Religions, and your booth is right across from ours. Your booth says Awaken Now, and you're a Jainist, and you created board games. And all of that is so interesting to me. So can you tell us about the board games and why you created those as a way for people to understand Jainism?
Absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to speak with you and allowing our audience to be shared about these amazing concepts. The board game started from the journey when I had my 2 kids. And I realized that the most complex phenomenons of the ancient wisdom, it is very difficult to understand because it is not available in common day language. And I saw that these kids are most drawn towards entertainment.
Yeah.
And the best way to enter into their hearts and their psyche, to just a psyche which can change their thinking, which can change their lives, is through entering through the board games. Because the age kids of like 5 to 11, they are very much into board games.
Yes.
And that gave me an idea to use the ancient wisdom in such a way that they, while playing the game, they can just learn how they should go about with the life. Yeah.
All right, so I'm very interested in all of this. Making a game is not an easy thing to do. And then taking complex ancient wisdom and making that available for children is not easy to do. And you found a way to bring those together. How did you know how to make board games? I've seen 2 different board games over there. Do you have those 2, or are there others as well?
So in the process, I have created 6 board games, but launched only 2 of them for now.
Okay.
And yes, how did I start truly telling you? It was my inner desire and passion to teach my kids, life, to teach my kids the real virtues. And that gave me enough courage and enough intention to put it into the board form. I'm a very busy person with my own business and with handling the house and being a housewife as well as a businesswoman. And the only time I could get to make these games was at night when everyone was sleeping.
Wow.
So my time to create them was 11 to 2 in the night. And I was like relentlessly working to hack into the minds of the young kids in order to, to get into it and bring these complex phenomena to the most simplified versions of life.
Well, we're going to talk about those concepts in a minute, but I want to stay on the games if we could. How did you know how to make a board game? Did you know people, or did you have to look on the internet? How did you?
It's a very simple task of life. If you are an observer, you can do anything in life. All of us have played board games. We have gone through it. We know what magic it creates inside us when we go through the process. That has lived in hearts of every one of us. And that gave me the impulse to just go ahead and do it.
Wow. How long did it take you from when you first started to have a game together that you felt like communicated what you wanted it to communicate?
Right. So you know that I told you I have a very, very short time moments that I could put together to create the games. And it took me 6 years to finish up those board games.
That's a long commitment.
Yes.
Were you raised in Jainism?
I am. Yes, I'm raised in Jain philosophy. Yes.
How did your parents teach it to you? And why did you want that process to be different than how you taught it to your children?
2 basic phenomena which was ingrained in my, as a Jain kid. Number 1 was my food eating style. So we are very kind and we have a non-violent lifestyle. So vegetarianism, and then above all sometimes veganism. So that's the core of our food style, which teaches us that we are Jains because we are kind to everyone. To the extent that we will even filter the water we drink. And when we filter the water, the organisms, the microorganisms that get captured into that cloth, when we filter it, we put those organisms back into the source. That is the level of our vigilance towards kindness towards living beings around us.
Wow.
Because we believe that every single living being, be it a microorganism, an ant, an elephant, or a human being, it has consciousness which has the capacity to reach to its highest potential. So we have respect for every being in the universe. So
Wow.
that's where the Jain lifestyle begins. And then with that statement said, it goes into the lifelong way.
So your parents taught that to you without board games. How did they
Yes.
how did they teach it to you, and why did you feel like your children would benefit so much from a different approach?
So in the olden times where I'm coming from, we used to have joint family. So living in a joint family, we were not controlled or, of our thought process inside just by two set of parents. So our parents were like 10 sets of parents for
I
us,
see.
right? And that gave us a bigger dimension to learn
Wow, yeah.
things because we got verifications. We saw our parents doing it, and then we saw the whole family doing it. Then we
Yes,
saw the whole
I see.
community doing it. So it's them doing the actions that spoke to us in a non-verbal way, and we changed our lives.
Like you were immersed in it.
Yes,
Y-
and
yes.
looking at the society system today, which is a nuclear family in which we are just four members living together, husband, wife, and two kids, like that's the basic setup here.
Yeah.
So with that, there is such a restricted area
Right.
of learning. And most of the time, we don't have time for each other or for others because we are too busy, occupied with our own lives, right?
Yeah.
And so who will teach these lessons?
So for a child growing up in an American context, you needed to find an immersive experience for them, and the board games and games was one of the ways they could do that.
Yes, I believe it holds true for every culture civilization who is westernized now.
Yeah. Do you sometimes wish you were living in India to raise your children?
I believe your home is where you create it.
Okay. So you've said, all right, I had one experience, but I'm going to create an experience for my children. Where do you live? What part of?
I'm
the
in New
country?
York. I'm living
Okay.
in Long Island.
Okay. Is the Jain community lively there? Are there other people for you all to be engaged with? And
Yes, it's Jain and non-Jain community. Everyone is like very much active towards the thought processes that I am creating these games with. Yes.
yeah. Have you found other children now? Do you know friends and other people in your community that are using these games and benefiting from them?
Very interestingly, the games initially got picked up by psychology consultants and by senior citizen groups. So the age group of these games is one game is 9 to 99, the other game is 5 to 99. Well, why not 100? Then after 99, you don't need it.
Yeah, that's right.
So
You can rest on your.
yes. So it is. So I have a review from an institute, from an education institute director. She was the principal of in New Jersey. She was the principal of institute there, a school college, and then she played the game one time with me. And after playing the game, she's 84 years, and she told me that, Surbhi, I believe looking at the thought process you're giving me, I need to restart my life one more time. I have not learned any of these concepts ever in my life.
What
So
are
that
the
was
concepts that they learn that someone experiences when they play the game or when they?
The biggest one is self-realization.
Okay.
Also, the word I've given to it is clarity. Having clarity in every single thing that we do. Clarity of our intentions, clarity of our speech, clarity of our behavior, and how does that clarity comes in. So the games are helping us recognize our everyday events, and through those everyday activities and events, I'm taking them to a level of self-realization. And then they get clarity in how to make correct choices in their life. So
Wow.
it's a process, yes.
What was your clarifying intention when you came to this event? What were you knowing you wanted to do when you were here?
Number one intent was bringing an awareness of consciousness in everyone. Here, everyone is talking about conscience. Conscience gives us a decision-making power to do good or to do bad. So we are differentiating between good and bad all the time.
Yes.
But according to me, consciousness is not about good or bad. Consciousness is complete in itself. It does not pass a judgment. It does not pass opinion, gives an opinion about anyone. It just is there. All we need to do is recognize the power of the consciousness. And when we recognize, the consciousness flows through us in our blank space that we create for it to flow through. And then it starts talking to us. That's what, in truth, the conscience is. Today, our conscience is based on our belief systems. But when our real level of consciousness gets raised, that is the point when the conscience must begin to talk in the right ways.
Conscience doesn't need to be based on something else. It's
No.
in and of itself.
Yes.
Is
You don't need a
sufficient.
belief system for conscience to speak for you. Just raise your level of consciousness and conscience will begin speaking through you.
Is that particular to you? Is that a Sabi approach where other Jains are like,
This is
I
a
don't
life
know, we don't see
approach.
it?
It's a long way for me to come to this point of
Yes.
self-realization. I'm a science student, so I'm very much into the latest scientific researches and neuroscience and neurobiology and just name it, mathematics and physics. And I'm trying to find the answers to the ancient wisdom through these modern technologies and the ways and the discoveries. And from those, when I started relating, I came with this understanding that let's stop talking about conscience, just raise the level of consciousness, it will speak.
When people hear you say this and they come from a tradition or a practice where consciousness is based on something else, how do they push back, or how do they respond if they don't agree with you?
Yes,
What do
very
they say?
interesting. I'll tell you, I'm taking a workshop here. It's a 9-hour immersive workshop. It's divided into 3 days, 3 hours each day. So in this workshop yesterday, which I gave my first one, it was a 3-hour where I was training people to understand understand themselves, realize themselves better. So I'm not talking about consciousness to them. I'm not talking about conscience to them. You will not believe it. I'm talking to them about what they already got, which is their 5 senses. I'm talking to them about their mind, about their thought process, about their the speech, the clarity in speech. I'm talking very practical. I'm bringing them from their thoughts and bringing them down, grounding them to the earth, and bringing them into their physical
love it.
bodies. Once you start clearing up your physical sensations and allow space in them, because right now we see things the way we want to see. We don't see the things the way they are. We hear things how we want to hear.
Yes.
We don't hear what is being said. Right? We
Right,
taste
right.
depending on what our preferences for taste is. But we are not realizing that the ability of taste is there just to taste, just to realize yourself. So after the workshop, everyone had a big laugh. They said, really, it could be that simple to listen to our consciousness?
I mean, I hear people who talk about consciousness in a lot of arenas. My wife was a yoga instructor, and there's a lot of this in my life. And many times people contrast those physical sensibilities with consciousness. They want you to pursue some ways that you quiet all of those and set them aside so they don't interfere with the real thing that's consciousness.
Okay.
I feel like you're saying something different than that, though.
So 2 things combined here, right? So aren't we a spirit inside a body?
Okay.
Why do we have both the things together? There's a reason to it. We cannot neglect the body. We cannot neglect the body's sensations.
Yes.
Instead, we have to go through it. We have to realize and recognize
Right.
ourselves through it.
Yes.
You cannot deny your likes and dislikes that you feel through your senses.
Wow.
You need to recognize it in order to realize yourself.
Yeah.
So I have 3 basic words that I use is recognize, realize, and rehearse. By recognize what you have been given, what you have.
Wow.
And recognize
Like pay
it powerful.
attention to it and
Pay
name
atten-
it and-
Pay attention to it and recognize its true abilities. What are your eyes meant for? What are your ears meant for? What are your senses meant for? What is your mind meant for? First, recognize your abilities and what you can do through them. First, come to the body, come to the ABCs first, right? That's recognizing. Then you go to realization. So realization is every single article you have been given in the body is directing just towards yourself. It is giving you a point of realization. The moment you taste something sweet, tell me, that sweet feeling is inside you, or is it inside that sweet you are tasting?
Oh, yeah. I see.
That realization is inside you.
Yes.
So I'm connecting through your physicality to your realized state to make you come to the point to understand that you exist. You exist in this body. You don't exist in your
Yeah.
mind.
Okay.
Stop living in your mind.
All right.
And then finally it's
Okay, yeah.
rehearsing, which is you need to rehearse your experiences. Once you detach yourselves from your emotional experiences and bring yourself to your physical experiences, right? That's the point. You get certain kind of experiences, which is aha moments, because you're not having any filtered thoughts for anything now. And with those aha moments, those experiences need to be rehearsed, because
Yes,
we
yes.
are running long with our wrong way of
Yeah, like habits and patterns.
habits, patterns, addictions. It's running long way.
Yeah.
To cut it off, we need to rehearse our good experiences.
Another the set of experiences that we're really having, not the ones we're telling ourselves.
Yes,
I
yes.
love this very much. I think this is genius. And there are a lot of people that I know, again, who talk about consciousness, and they don't reference the body as the prime experience. They say things like it's the empty container, the flesh, the dead meat in which our consciousness dwells and someday will leave behind for its full purposes. I hear that in people who hold to Eastern thought. I hear that in Christian thought. A lot of people say that. You're saying something different.
Yes, please. Definitely there are levels, right? Once the consciousness begins to talk through you, the
Yeah.
consciousness gets an unlimited access through your limited body for a time period of time, right? And then later on, the consciousness has such a power that it expands itself. And it will expand itself, and it will pull itself out of this the limited form to realize its unlimited potential. And that's the process when the body gets left behind and the consciousness becomes you. Your existence
I
becomes complete.
But as
that's
long
a
as you have a
process.
body,
Yeah,
then
but
you
you,
have to
need
be
to go
in it.
through your body.
Some point you won't have a body, but
Yes,
as long as you
yes.
do, you can't keep denying
You
it.
can't talk about that right now, you know?
Wow, that is what when I a lot of
So
people
everyone
ask.
is talking about the Z's without telling how to go to Z from A.
Yes.
So that's
and they want
that's
to talk
not gonna
about
work.
whatever experience is
That
going to be
feels
after.
good. That feels good to talk about. You feel, wow,
Yes.
you're in some space talking. You know,
Yes.
yesterday when I took that workshop, in the end, everyone was, really? And then I said, did I take away the song from your party?
Yes.
The music from your party?
I could see why.
Because everyone is in their thoughts and they like to talk about the soul and
Yes.
consciousness and conscience, not
Yes.
realizing that they are first physical beings.
Yes, and they're disassociating,
And they're
basically.
dissociating, they're denying their own
Yes.
reality, and they want to talk about something they're not yet realized about.
It's a dualism that people really
Yes.
want to get out so that they can be freed. Why do you think so many of us want to get free from our bodies then? Obviously people are supporting these ideas because somehow they want them. What do you think it is that makes people want that dualistic separation?
There are several things. Everyone is in their own path of maturity, right? Self-realization. Some people come to this point of realization from their sufferings, from their divorces, from losing loved ones. They realize that life is much more than what they used to believe it is. Some people come from listening to the masters. There's something more of me possible. Looking at the higher level consciousness where Gandhi operated from, where Martin Luther King operated from, much higher, Vivekananda operated from, much higher level of consciousness, which is capable of influencing thousands of people because of its raised consciousness. And so there are many factors which can bring people to get attracted towards understanding what this consciousness could be about.
Yeah. If someone hears this conversation and thinks, I didn't know about Jain belief, and they look up Jainism, are they going to find this, what you're describing, or are they going to find something?
They're going to find it only on your channel right now. I'm not out there.
You're coming from a Jain perspective, but you're expanding it in some new ways. Do you ever feel like you're going to have to leave Jainism behind for something new, or
Okay,
where do you?
so I understand that it's not just Jainism because I was a very rebellion kind of kid. I
Okay.
said that just because I'm born in a Jain family, I'm not going to listen to what Jainism is
Wow.
speaking to me about. So I started going through Buddhism to Christianity, through Zoroastrianism to name it. I mean, New Age sciences, everything. New religions, and I started investigating through everything. Then I realized that. Every single thing, the common piece in everyone is the desire to be free, the desire to experience
Yeah.
your own higher potential, right? And then I started seeing what is because I'm a science student, I want logic and science. So I started investigating Jain science also. And then I learned in my way that it is actually science. It has got nothing to do with religion. It's a complete science. It talks about physics. It talks about microbiology. I'm a microbiology student. It talks about genetics. It talks about physics. It talks about dimensions. I mean, cosmology, astrology,
Yeah.
everything. It's a complete science. Then I started investigating from the perspectives of today's discoveries on the science.
Okay.
And that gave me a lot of, and with the blessings of my guru, because I was a rebellion kid, I did not want to just
Okay.
listen to Jain philosophy and how it's opening up the minds. But I learned that Jainism is not a religion, it is a lifestyle. And that was my beginning point.
Okay.
That I have to tell this to the world that this is just the way of humanity. That is just live yourself like a normal human being. And if you want to learn how to be a normal human being, please listen to these basic concepts. It will be easier to go there.
I see. So for you, Jainism is not about the teachings and the beliefs and the structures. It's about a way of going, and to that you're expanding.
When your consciousness expands, you get the learnings, you get the teachings through it, through your own life. You learn it through it.
Do your parents feel like you've kept with the Jain faith, or do they think you've veered off?
Their only work was for them to marry me into the Jain faith.
Okay.
And then they were gone. They said, "Tada, bye, bye. Our work is done."
They're
Now
not
I'm
worried
on
about
my own.
that. They're not worried about that. Are you married now?
Yes, I'm
Does your
married.
husband think you've stayed inside the Jain faith?
My husband is a Jain, right? But what is happening with the newer generations is that even though they're just born as Jain, but they are not understanding the core. They don't have the core understanding what is a Jain lifestyle about.
I see.
And so everyone is in different directions today. So what we really need is to lighten up their hearts, their beings, with living the right kind of life. That is all is required for humanity today,
see.
right? So he is totally open to my ideas.
I see.
Yes.
When I was talking to some people here about your booth, and I said, what I understand of Jain faith, they're so committed to nonviolence that they're careful about bugs, and they won't eat gourds because when they're pulled up, they affect the microorganism. And I knew it was sort of embedded in Indian, Hindu thoughts, but older than that, I think. I didn't know very much, but what I did know was that part of the nonviolence and the care, and vegetarianism and veganism and so on. Do you think that's a good thing for someone to have known? Like, do you wish someone like me who knew a few things about Jain said, what I know about it is something else? Or how does that strike you?
The best thing which you just said in your statement is not harming anyone. That is all. I mean, you are a Jain too now, when you're coming from that perspective.
Yes. Yeah. I've been more that way at different times of my life. I have there's a Christian teaching that everything lives and moves in God. So God's not in us, but we all live in God. And so everything we are about is in the life of God.
It's a nice way to expand your awareness and bring more alertness into your thought process. Going a step further, Jainism talks about that every single being is a god in the making. Yes, it is. The awareness inside us is able to recognize the awareness around us.
Yes.
So we need to make our awareness to such an unrestricted, vulnerable level that every single being in the universe can just have an empathetic participation with us,
Yeah.
just to start with. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's beautiful. You were able to speak in the session in there. How did that go, and what did you say?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, my plenary speech went well. A lot of people told me that's how you come to know how it was taken
Okay.
and received. Two major concepts I spoke there. I know the world is under such a big turmoil with so many things going on at the level of disturbing its peace. But somehow I always begin from within myself. The work has to be done within. So
Yeah.
two basic concepts I put forward. One is interdependence, which is Jain concept of parasparo pagroho jivanam, which means that each one of us is here for each other, with each other, to recognize the presence of goodness in each other. We are interdependent on our just talk about these mirror neurons concept right now, right?
Yeah.
If you are experiencing pleasure or pain, just sitting in front of you, I already start strategizing the same pain and pleasure inside me.
Yeah.
So we are so interdependent on each other. We don't realize that every single thought, every single word, every single intention we have in our mind and heart has an effect and creates a ripple in the grand ocean right there in front of us. So that's the concept of interdependence. And the second one is Atma Swatantra, which is every single soul has the capacity to uplift themselves and make the right choices.
Oh.
Yeah, so those two were biggest concepts which I put forward, that let's resolve the world issues by being very much open to these two thoughts.
Yeah, and those two thoughts are central to Jain belief.
Yes, they are.
If someone looks up Jain,
Yes.
they're going to find
They're
those
gonna
two.
find those two, yes.
And a few others, but not your other consciousness upgrade. The consciousness upgrade. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Please, thank
It's really,
you so
really
much
wonderful.
for this.
Yeah, thank
Truly
you.
enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.
So great.
I mean, serious. Just I had to jump on another browser on YouTube just to make my own comments about how great I thought she was. Yeah, just so wonderful. Man, what were you struck by, Dan? I mean, I know there was a bunch of comments in there too. We can talk about those, but anything strike you in the?
Yeah, I was just going to put up a couple of the comments here. This interdependence and interconnectedness idea. Alex says, our interdependence and interconnectedness is why what we do to another, we do to ourselves, both good and bad.
Right.
Yeah.
The echo,
totally.
the Christian teachings and Jesus teachings that were just going through my head. I remember now talking with her, and then also sitting here. You know, that's Jesus saying, "I'm in the Father, the Father's in me, and I'm in you. Or what you do to the least of these, you do to me." Like,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of social construct ways you can talk about those kinds of teachings, but there's also what she's getting at, which is the human experience is actually interlaced, and the you and me and other is not a that's just a fiction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of parallels. I mean, Jesus was trying to get us to stop harming each other, see our interconnectedness, and see that when we harm someone else, we're actually doing damage to our own soul and our own selves and our own communities. And it's almost like Jainism takes it a step further, like not just people, but the living beings around you, you are also connected to. And I love that she brings in science to the conversation, from neuroscience to, ecology. Like, we are connected to the earth in ways that we're only just beginning to understand through science, whether it's on a macro level, ecosystems, to like gut bacteria level. We're starting to understand all the living things that are working around us and in us. And, from the neuroscience to those mirror neurons she mentioned, we can see and feel when someone else is hurting, and it is mirrored in our own selves and hurts us as well. So,
Yeah.
pretty
It's
interesting.
just great. Yeah, now I'm reminded by people in the chat that today is not only Valentine's Day, but in the Christian tradition, at least one big swath of it, it's Ash Wednesday. And so that notion of like body and spirit connection that Surbhi was talking about was just so great, you know. And her like, no, I pushed the other Jainists on the idea that they want to get out of their bodies and into their heads and into their consciousness, and you've got to root it right there in the body. That is the demand of true integration and true understanding. Man, that was just wonderful.
Yeah.
And it, again, the wonderful thing about the Parliament of the World's Religions was, and I'm not trying to blend all the religions together, because I don't think they're blended. I think they all bring their own unique contribution, and they're not saying simply the same thing. They're just all part of the same picture, right? And it's better than it's kind of all the same, you know. I mean, I think when people samism things, it's like, yeah, I think you might be missing the beauty of this thing. But those contributions, they echo the contributions that other traditions say in their own ways. You know, that there's the integration of body and spirit is essential to a particular way of thinking. And I thought her way of getting after that was just so great.
Yeah.
What
really
a
great.
treat. What a treat. And then she's so inclusive in it, which is at the end, like, well, you're Jane now. You know, if you take a nut,
you're into nonviolence. Oh, you're part of the club.
Yeah, and she wasn't raised that way. She was raised with, like, you know, there's ins and outs, and you're going to marry a Jane, and that's going to be it, and then your kids are going to be that, and it's our community and not those communities, you know. So she was pushing back on that and saying, well, I'm not interested in Jane experience can only happen in some places. I also love that. I mean, that just really resonated with me, her saying, I don't want to go back to India and do it in India. I want to figure out in Long Island, you know, because if Jane is true for me, then it needs to be a thing where I am. It has to work here. I can't have a place where it happens and places where it doesn't. And every tradition has its own way of hinting that, you know, you have to do it in this location or in this country or in this language or in the building or with only these leaders or only these select people. You have to have the right conditions to be in place for any of this to work. And she's like, yeah, no, that's not what I'm up to.
Yeah. And it was a great reminder, not just for Jainists, but for a bunch of other folks we met in their faith traditions, that these world religions, some of the biggest in the world, as well as some of these less familiar to those of us in the Western world, they aren't static monoliths like we sometimes think. They are growing and evolving and progressing, and there's differences and debates and people trying to push their faith traditions forward, just like many of us are. And I just found that really inspiring. Yeah,
me too. So great. Well, all right. Well, happy Jane Day on the Common Good podcast, and happy Valentine's Day, and good Ash Wednesday to you. And you know, there's just some of those religious holidays you can't really say happy, I think. That's funny.
And remember that we are dust.
Yeah, that was it. And it's like even that, right, in the Christian tradition, because I've always thought of we are dust as like you're just going to disintegrate someday, right? Okay, so fair enough. Maybe that's what it is. That you got this formula right now, but whether your body's burned in a crematory or you just wait in the ground, it's gonna all break apart and turn to dust. Or, you know, what Surbhi might be saying to us is, no, the dust and you, same thing. No difference. No difference here. Like find your you in the dust. You know, I don't know. It was, or in the ash or in the ashes. It was just, yeah. So I remember smiling for 24 hours after that conversation, and now it's happening again. It's really lovely. It's pretty great. Pretty great. All right, all. Well, thanks for being a part of this. And if you know people that like this kind of thing, share this. I already have half a dozen people right off my mind that I'm like, oh, I'm totally sharing this with certain people that are just going to love it. You know, they're gonna be yelling out loud in their cars or kitchens when they're listening to it. How much they love it. So maybe you're all the same way, and you can share it. You can share it around. Is that good for today?
Yeah, it's great. And check the show notes for links, and we'll let you find those ways to her website.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, see y'all. Bye. Happy day.